This is IA Forward, your playbook for success as an independent insurance agent. Now, here to help you knock it out of the ballpark are your hosts, Shane Tatum, Tanya Lead, Mike Basil, and Robbie Jabor.
Welcome to IA Forward. And Shane has no idea what we are talking about today, even though it is on his calendar and in 18's message.
It is not on my calendar. It is not on my calendar anywhere.
Well, I sent it to you, and it's in Mike's calendar, and it's in Robbie's calendar. So I'm not quite sure where the technological breakdown is. But I'm just saying, if it's 3-1, it might be with you.
Unless you have the final veto vote, and then it's 1-3 overrides very, very quickly.
Mike, did you finally get to your Hot Pocket yesterday, wondering what the topic was?
Yeah. If I don't know ahead of time, I get real flustered. I could barely eat.
Just like Shane. Shane has done this podcast for 4 years, not knowing what the topic is when we start. But today, he has decided that this is important to him.
I don't really care. Like, you're right. Like, it doesn't really matter. We're just going to talk about what we're going to talk about. But I was just curious because we always ask, what are we talking about today? So I just was, decided, I think, well, okay, what are we talking about today?
So we're going to talk a little Bill Gates. And what's interesting is that this is a Bill Gates quote, but Tony Robbins did a session recently on this as well. And that is how we overestimate what we can do in a year, but we underestimate what we can do in a decade. And I think this is a really fantastic topic for us as independent agency owners, especially new agency owners.
I know there's people in this house over here that overestimate what they can do in the 30 minutes we're going to have before we're leaving the house, but I don't think that's the topic here today.
I concur with that comment about you have to give the 15-minute buffer rule, right? Like, if you have to leave at 7:30, you say you leave at 7:15.
That's right.
Yes.
You got to know that, right? Like, that's just something I learned years ago as a girl dad, right? Like, that's just a reality.
And Shane also, I think, does this for me for Integra events as well, because he's a girl dad and he understands how my mind thinks, and that's okay. I totally accept that. Now, do you guys do the time check with your significant other type humans?
I'm going to go with no because I don't know what that is.
Yeah.
Like if you're supposed to leave at 7:30 and therefore you're leaving at 7:15, at like 6:45, do you start doing it's 6:45 and it's 7 o'clock and it's 7:10 and start doing the time checks?
I got to do that with the kids in the morning because I'm the one that takes them to school every day. Shelly gets to work early. So, yeah, 6:50, I'm announcing it. 7 o'clock, I'm announcing it. Because we got to get out of the door at a certain time. And if we don't, then it really kind of messes up the morning. Kind of like today. Just a few minutes kind of changes the whole outcome.
Oh, if you start late, you're doomed. Sorry.
Right.
And that was Shane yesterday, y'all. He started late yesterday, and
I didn't get up. I get up every weekday morning at 5 a.m., 5:15, fudge a little bit there. And my day's great. Yesterday morning, Monday was the morning, and I slept in till 6:15, 6:30, something like that. And I was tired. It was like not getting up. And my day was a total disaster all day. Stayed behind, running behind all day.
Why on earth do you get up at 5:15?
That's his coffee time with Julie.
No, Julie's walking, running at that time.
Oh my gosh.
So that's my, well, number one, Mike, I live in Texas and it's not 40 below at 5 a.m. So unlike, 4 months, 5 months out of your year. And so I get up morning routine. I know this is not our topic, but make first little, cup of coffee. I do my quiet time, my Bible study. Then I get ready for you people, right? Like for 30 minutes, right? I look at my calendar. I look at my day. I make notes. What did I forget to prepare for? So it's kind of like my catch-all preparation for procrastinating to the day of. So it sounds really good on paper. Wow, Shane gets up at 5 a.m. every day. Shane gets up at 5 a.m. because he probably procrastinated the day before to prepare for what was going to happen that day, right?
I mean, if I was getting up at 5:15, I'll tell you what, you'd have to throw a handle on this for the amount of coffee I would need to function. That is ridiculous.
I love when Mike brings out the props. It brings me such joy. And this is why it doesn't matter if I give Shane a topic, because he's going to talk about exactly what he wants to talk about. And apparently that is going to be, what should you do first thing in the morning?
No, we're not going to talk about that because everybody's got their preference. You do what you do. You do you, right?
Did you just say that?
You do you.
Gosh,
Right?
I thought that was a fireable offense to use that term. That's like using a sticky note, putting a label on an envelope crooked, and you do you. Those are the three things you don't do at a time. Or close your blinds.
Well,
Yeah.
I'm getting older. I used some sticky notes the other day. I'm saying phrases that I severely dislike. It's a new day.
Next time I'm down there, I'm going to make a blind out of sticky notes
There you go.
and put it on one of those windows. That'll get you rolling.
That'll get his
You
attention.
don't need your coffee that day.
I definitely have to say this, though. I didn't have Bill Gates on my calendar. I'm just saying Bill Gates was not on my calendar.
As the fabulous Deanna Cassidy would say, well, bless. So our topic, why do we overestimate what we can do in a year and underestimate tenure?
Trying to talk less today, maybe.
Yeah, you tried that last week
I
too.
know. It didn't work.
You made it 6 minutes.
You did good this morning, though. Your 30-minute, I mean, it went over, 3 minutes? That wasn't bad.
Pretty good.
Yeah, we had an all-staff call this morning for 30 minutes, and it was 33 minutes, and that's perfection.
Mm-hmm. It's awesome. I think we overestimate, period. Like, we overcommit, overestimate. I'm terrible at this. Like, squeeze too much in. Things that really should take a lot of time, or they just take time. Like, things take time. You have to, the adjustments. Sometimes it's a hurry up and wait process. Sometimes you're just cramming too much into days, and you really don't get anything done. So I think it's just a overcommitment society, maybe, that we live in would be one school of thought.
Hard to say no, sometimes. But I think from a new agency owner perspective, the overestimating is just, in my opinion, the desire to see a return on your investment quickly. You know what I mean? Like they've got to feed their family. They don't want to turn away business. So that 10-year outlook, where how you build your business initially, how you want to look down the road, a lot of it has to do with how disciplined you can be up front. And it's hard. I just see it from agents that we bring on sometimes. It's just hard not to get in that mindset.
I think that, there's two parts to that, right? We're overestimating what we can do in a year and we're underestimating what we can do in a decade, right? And I think your mindset within that has a lot to do with it in terms of, when you're just starting, you have all this gusto and you feel like you can conquer the world. And then you get beat down inevitably along the way. You get beat down a little bit. And now you start to question what you can accomplish over a longer period of time. Plus, you have all the low-hanging fruit that you can collect in that first 12 months. That's obviously not there anymore. And what you're not necessarily taking into consideration is the snowball effect. We talk about the snowball effect a lot internally, that, one client, you do well for that one client. That's fantastic. They might tell 5 friends. Okay, now you get a couple of those, then they tell another 5 friends. You have to keep that snowball effect mindset as you start thinking about long.
In my bathroom, I have a plaque that a friend of mine gave me years ago that says surviving is important, but thriving is elegant. And to me, it's the idea that annual thinking is survival mode. Like, I've got to do all of these things to survive. And then the idea of a decade or 5 years or even 3 years, that is ownership mode. That's thriving and figuring out what does it take to go from survival to thriving. And our brains start to think differently, and they start to overestimate, say, well, if I double revenue this year, then I'll get to thriving. Or if I hire 2 or 3 producers, then I'm going to be able to thrive. Or if I can just get these 3 carriers or this one carrier that I'm losing against, that's going to solve my profitability issue, right? And so we start to think what will take us from survival to thriving. And then we start to focus on maybe even the wrong things or too many things.
I know Bill Gates has been moderately successful financially, somewhat.
Just a little bit.
I just don't know if I love these timelines. Like, I understand the point of a year and a decade. I do. But I'm thinking about the independent agency and certainly starting your own agency. I really like 90 to 120 days versus 3 years, 36 months. We have benchmarks in our organization, in our agency network, and agents that partner with us can earn benchmark bonuses. And we have those benchmarks set. There's 4 of them, right? 9 months, 15 months, 30 months, and 42 months. And so we really kind of cap that off at that 3.5 year mark. And we do that so that agents can kind of do this, what we're talking about, like not get overwhelmed, like do the little things day in and day out to how's their progress going. And the reason that there's premium dollars at those time intervals, right? So it's both premium production and a time interval standpoint. I get the 1 year decade kind of thing. And on the flip side of those time frames, and then you have like our benchmark, you also have the guys over the software company at 37 Signals who say, they do everything on 2 weeks and 6 week intervals. Like, they're even really crazy about the way they look at time and what can get accomplished and what people can get accomplished within a certain amount of time, right? And then just this morning in our all staff meeting, I was talking about, it just hit me during that call that a year ago, we made an acquisition of a small agency here in our community that brought us 2 individuals. One of those individuals was who we, realized during the interview process was a great candidate to be our service center director. And we were not planning to launch our service center until the fourth quarter, or start building our service center until the fourth quarter of 2025. And because of, the acquisition, because of finding Caitlin, we sped that up and we started working on our service center build out at the end of quarter one, 2025. And we're in pilot right now, a year later. Like, what was accomplished in a year was crazy. And I actually thought it was kind of slow, right? Because let's go back to our point. I thought we were going too slow. Like, what do you mean we're going to pilot first quarter of 26? Like, this is first quarter 25. Why can't we pilot in July? like that was my brain. Like, why can't we do this? And Tara and Caitlin talked me into a longer runway, a more realistic build out. And I went with it. Like, I took a step back, gave them a little more rope, and just sort of like, hey, okay, I'll go with your deal. And, a year feels like a long time to a salesperson. But when you back up and look at it from an ownership standpoint, like, the fact that we are here and that we are really foundationally built around our service center, we have a legit shot of this being really successful. Yeah. And versus my approach, which would have been like, get it up and running in 4 months and let's start piloting it in August and let's be live by the end of the year. Like, I would have probably run some people off. We would have run people in the ground. We would have had some missteps with our processes. We'd have had some upset partner agents, because I'm a sales guy at heart. I'm a marketing guy at heart. And so I'm not an operations guy. And I let the operations people take the lead and do this. And so I think it's really interesting to think about this topic as in general, not just our own mindset, but just the realities of what we've experienced.
That's a really good, the service center is a good point. If you think about it, Shane, 2018 was actually the first time you wanted to get into this venture, right? So, we may have overestimated a little bit because we weren't quite there technology. I mean, that's the reason why I was hired, is to help develop and run the service center. And so we get into it and we realize technology-wise, we're not ready. Yeah. And so we kind of scaled back. And now 8 years later, we've got almost a fully functioning service center. I know we're in the pilot right now, but I mean, that's kind of to the topic's point, is that patience paid off.
Yeah, that's right.
So when you're talking about like the 10-year, what's wrong with attaching an unrealistic goal to that and putting that up on the whiteboard? And then if you make it to 80% of that or 75% of that, you're in great shape. What's wrong with that?
I have no problem with that. I know Tanya and I have had this debate for off and on for several years, and I know she's going to have a take on it as well. I love unrealistic stretch goals. They don't disappoint me. Like, I see it through that lens. Like, let's, in 5 years, we're going to be $1 billion premium organization, right? Or something like that. Like, we're going to do X. And that doesn't bother me. Like, huge stretch goal, a 10-year goal of whatever. I do think that some people struggle with the stress that gets attached to that. Like, it doesn't stress me out, but it does stress others out.
I love goals. I am the queen of goal setting and planning to hit them. I do have to have a goal that is somewhat attainable. Yes, I love a stretch goal. My years in sales management, working with people to achieve those stretch goals, that is fantastic. But I do know for a lot of salespeople and producers, agency owners, if you set a goal and don't hit it and have it in black and white, it can spiral in a very, very negative direction. That just goes back to personality type. What works best for you? Some people respond to a coach telling them what a piece of crap they are. Some people need a little bit of positive reinforcement, right? And different people respond to different things. And I think ultimately it's not about the goal. Ultimately, it's about the consistency of the plan to create the goal. And if we're just setting goals, we're never going to reach them. We have to actually know how we're going to hit it. But part of this to me is asking the question the right way. Like, are you asking yourself, what's my goal for 2026? Or are you asking the question, what kind of agency owner do I want to be in 2036? And by asking that little bit longer term question, this is the kind of agency I want to own. This is the kind of owner I want to be. This is the ultimate goal where I want to have myself with my organization. Well, then you can work backwards to set those yearly goals as you need to down to 1 year.
Yeah. And I agree. Like, that's not a disagreement. Just kind of a thinking kind of comment there is just, you always, salespeople are really good at saying, you know, I want to sell $1 million, and then they work their way back. And what kind of time do I need to do that? And this is where we probably overcommit ourselves and what we can do in a year, right? Maybe we didn't build a foundation very well. Maybe we didn't do something. I will probably always err to the side of just this BHAG, right? Big, hairy, audacious goal. That's just kind of one of those things out there in business books. You know, what is your BHAG? Almost to the point of unattainability. And I'm gonna say that's because of my experience with failure through the years. Not that I love failure, right? That's not what I mean. But like, I've accepted that failure is part of the progress. I accepted early on as a baseball player that I was playing a game of failure. Like, it's just that way. You know, we talk about that sport, and there's other sports that aren't necessarily a game of failure. There's other sports that are kind of built around a lot of perfection in some cases. There are, you know, this is why this is why maybe I have a love-hate relationship with umpires. Like, I don't do judgment sports very well, you know, kind of in Tanya's foray, like, you know, where somebody's like deciding whether you did well or not, instead of, you know, it's like, yeah, well, that judge likes this, or, you know, gymnastics or dance, or
Subjective judging.
Sports I've never been involved in, right? So I don't have that perspective. I have the perspective of, you know, were we winning at the end of 9 innings or not, right? Like, what did we score more than them? And so, you know, I understand why Tanya and I have always had this friendly debate on this topic, because it doesn't bother me, right? Like, it doesn't, you know, and I've never counseled people that were in that realm that had to deal with that type of subjective judging. I've counseled people the opposite of that. Like, hey, you were successful 4 out of 10 times. You're on pace to be in the Hall of Fame. You know, you failed 6 out of 10 times, and you're potentially an All-American. You know, I mean, so it's just a weird, different dynamic, right? About that kind of, I think I think it kind of structures the goal setting, frames the goal setting based on your experiences in life, what you did, right? What is your background? And it structures around that.
The idea of looking long term, sometimes I forget that we think, sometimes I think we forget that things compound, right? And so we'll say, okay, I'm going to do this in 1 year, and then next year I'm going to do this, and next year I'm going to do that. But things compound over time, and we forget that as agency owners. Like discipline compounds, and talent, and client trust, and reputation. And so when you look at doing things consistently, going back to Mike's idea of things snowball, and Shane uses the term, pushing the flywheel out of good to great, right? And I believe that if that slow and steady agency is going to be worth more in the end than that rocket ship that takes off, unless you're trying to create some kind of hockey stick growth to have an immediate sale, right? But if it's something that you're building for yourself, you're creating a legacy, you want it long term, I just really prefer that idea of building it slow and steady, and as things compound, you really grow. Now, I understand you have to feed your family, you have to pay the light bill, right? So finding that balance early on is really important.
Yeah, I think first of all, let me say this to circle back to Shane's point about umpires. Congratulations to Major League Baseball for straddling the fence in the most insane way possible this year, because who doesn't want baseball games to be longer? So allowing people to challenge balls and strikes seems like the optimal idea for that. So kudos to you, MLB. Fantastic.
Hey, is there a challenge limit? I'm sorry.
There is.
Okay.
You get so many per game.
700.
And they literally take 5 seconds. So,
I have to say that it was actually really neat seeing it at the Durham Bulls. They were one of the betas, and it almost gave the audience this extra cool thing to do, to root against the umpires, like that they're going to be wrong, and then like the audience actually got excited over it when they were wrong, and it did add a neat kind of new thing to the game itself when you were watching it live.
I'm just disappointed that Angel Hernandez is already retired, and we're not going to get the pleasure to see him and how many overturn calls he gets.
And absolutely melt down. Or what a crash out. That's what they call it now. Crash out.
Crash out.
Does anybody remember what I was talking about when I sidetracked myself?
Sorry. No, that I don't. I don't really know what you were talking about. So, do you?
Yeah, I was just kidding. The other thing, when we're talking about planning more in the long term, one thing that we never really give ourselves the opportunity to factor in my opinion, is the unknown of what opportunities could come from just doing well and doing the right thing. Maybe you get 3 years in and you're known pretty well in your community, and the guy that has an agency a few blocks away decides to retire, and he comes to you and wants to sell you his book. Well, now you've got some exponential growth there because of, the fact that you've always done the right thing, but you wouldn't have necessarily planned that in for a long-term goal. But, that I think speaks more to, the debate of which side of this do you want to be on. I think it really depends on your personality. For me, I'm more like Shane. I would rather see a really difficult goal. And if I get to 80% of it, like I mentioned before, then I'm happy. But Tanya, I totally understand what you're saying, where there's a personality type that would see that you're, okay, I'm 3 years in, but I'm only 15% of the way to this. and they start shutting down.
Right. Right. And part of this to me goes back to like figuring out, okay, if I'm working on this today, is building this process, will this process work in 10 years? Or the way am I doing it? Is that going to work in 10 years? Or I think sometimes early on we make decisions out of panic because things aren't moving at the speed that we want them to move at. And so that goes back to Shane's idea of responding and not reacting. Am I being panicked or am I being patient? Right. And ultimately, to me, does this decision make sense if I know my agency is going to be successful in 10 years? Am I doing this because it's going to be good for me today? Or is it going to be good for me 10 years from now? And I always love my mom. My mom, every December, in the kind of law that my mom practiced, December was always the really rough month, right? Like not a lot of revenue came into her law office in the month of December. And my mother did not do divorces, like absolutely no, did not do divorces. And every year, this divorce would come into her office and it was, uncontested and it was going to be an easy one and there weren't going to be any problems. And mom would be like, well, I'll do this one. And then she would regret it for all the next year, right? Because nothing in a divorce is as easy as it looks like on paper, right? So, seeing a very professional, successful businesswoman fall into this trap every December. And I would be like, don't do it. Don't do it. Don't do it. She's like, yeah, but, and every time but in our business, there are long-term repercussions.
There's so many things we talk about on this podcast that kind of come into that statement you just made, like, right, dabbling or, getting out of, doing too much, spreading too thin in terms of the types of business that you're going to try to write, especially within commercial in that first year, because you just want to get something on the books. And I get it. I totally understand the mindset. I get it, but you really have to fight against it.
Yeah. And, I go back to, unfortunately, a lot of our goals as independent agency owners come from comparison. And this is one of the things that I probably spend as much time on this topic, that, this sort of idea, talking with agents that feel like they're plateauing. They feel like they're, that they haven't reached some next level. They want to go to the next level. So I would kind of classify those agents as what I would call enterprise builders. And what's really interesting is the conversation goes a little something like this. Man, I've never made this much money in my life. I wish I would have done this years ago. I wish I would have left the exclusive system. I wish I would have, moved from producer to agency owner sooner. I've never been this successful. I've never done this well. I'm so frustrated about how I'm plateauing. Like, it's like those, they don't reconcile really well. It's like, I wish, I feel like I got to do something different. And yet right before that, it was, I've never been more successful in my life. Like, and so I think that comes from comparison. I think that comes from, going to, I'm not anti-conferences, right? We go to conferences, we host our own conference, but going to a conference and then hearing somebody talk about how great, they're doing, or seeing something on social media. And so it's like, you see through that lens and comparison, and you get into the comparison game, and then you start feeling like you're not where you're supposed to be, when in fact, if you look back and really look at where you started and where you've come to, and it might be 5 years, it might be 3 years, it might be 8 years, but you're looking at it going kind of like we are right now with the service center program. It's like, wow, I've come a long ways. Like, wow, this is really, really awesome. And so I think there's a lot of things that we have to keep perspective as agents, and as business owners. We have to keep that perspective and not let that get away from us and start seeing us in a negative light. Like, man, I'm plateauing. Okay, well, are you happy? That's the salesperson coming out in us. If I plateau, if I stop growing, does that mean I'm not a good agent anymore? Like, what does that mean? Maybe the mindset has to shift into more of a CEO, more of an ownership standpoint.
Well, look here, hold on. The other thing everybody has to keep in mind, picture time. Your growth is not going to look like this.
Yeah.
Okay. It's just not. There's a 0% chance of that. Right. So there's going to be peaks and valleys, and there's going to be stumbling blocks along the way. You can't get down when things like that happen, when those lulls come, because mindset is so important to this stuff. You bring it back to sports. I think I've used this example before, but like, I know there's probably not a lot of hockey fans that listen to this podcast, but the NHL team up here, the Buffalo Sabres, have been terrible forever. They started out the year rough this year. It was leaked out that the general manager was going to be fired. They won the next 3 games. The general manager got fired. They won the next 7 games, and they're like 25-5 since then. Okay, nothing really changed, right? This new GM hasn't made a single move, but the mindset shifted because they thought that guy, he was the first time he was doing that job. They thought he was a joke. They weren't working. Change was made. All of a sudden, the same people are experiencing this glow up, and they're in second place in their division. But it's the same. Your mind is so important.
Yeah, just to go back to what Shane said about comparison, my favorite quote is about Theodore Roosevelt, and he said comparison is the thief of joy. And
Thank God you didn't say something about Brady. Go ahead.
I think Brady came out with a new version. I'll find it for you and send it your way. But anyway, that is just so true. And then it all goes back to mindset and maybe being satisfied or being in that mindset where you're happy. Like you said, Shane, you've got a good thing going. You've built a really good book, making the most money that you've ever made. I mean, it just all comes back to that mental space and being comfortable.
Yeah, it does. And Tanya mentioned the flywheel and the book Good to Great, and it's kind of the compounding is included in that. Like in the way they describe it in the book, is you push on this. The visual is you got this huge flywheel, and you push and you push and you push, and then it never moves, and you're like, man. And all of a sudden it moves an inch, and then it moves 2 inches. And then at some point it moves pretty regularly. Now you're pushing, and every day it's moving. At some point there's what's called a breakthrough. And at the breakthrough, the weight and inertia, to use a big fancy word, we don't use those words in East Texas very often. So inertia.
Overspill it.
Yeah, inertia takes over, and the flywheel starts spinning itself, right? That's the visual that in the book Good to Great talks about businesses that have gone from good to great. Independent agencies that start from scratch and build and go from good to great. You look back and it's like, where was that breakthrough? And everybody has, it may not be a breakthrough exact moment in time, but it's a breakthrough year. It's a breakthrough couple of years, right, where things start happening, that's the compounding. That's the same thing, right? We're using different analogies and different terms, but you start getting more referrals because you got happy customers, because you had great customer experience. And a really, really cool example that's very real to me right now is my youngest daughter's going through going into a ministry program for 2 years and going to be doing her master's degree at a seminary. And she has to do what's called support raising, like it's part of the program. So basically in ministry, right, people giving offerings, tithes, whatever, in various circles, what they would call it. But she has to support raise, right? She has to, and one of the things about support raising is you want people to connect you with more people, right? Like it's not about like talking with someone and someone saying, oh, I would love to fund your whole 2-year, ministry. That's not realistic, number one, but it's also not what you want, right? Like what you want is you want one person that turns into 10 people, and those 10 people turn into 100 people. And so like people connecting you with other people is just as important as people deciding to partner with you in the ministry from a financial standpoint. It's the same thing. It's the inertia of the flywheel. It's the same thing that happens in an independent agency with centers of influence, referral sources, clients that become referral sources. I call them blabbers, right? That's my slang term. Like if you can get a new client that's a blabber, that's going to tell everybody how great you are, you need to take care of that person, right? You need to be, like whatever, customer experience needs to go through the roof, because it doesn't take a ton of blabbers when you get down to it.
I don't think I've ever heard you use that one before.
Yeah. Another Texas term. Blabber.
I want to go back to Robbie and that comparison is the thief of joy. And comparison is a 1-year disease to me. And what I mean by that is social media makes everything look immediate, right? I mean, I can go to social media and people are yelling at me that all I have to do is give them $10,000 and my agency is going to be successful immediately, right? And I'm so tired of people yelling at me for, various amounts of money, or I can give them $97 a month for the rest of my life to tell me, what they did to make their agency successful. But what we don't see on social is the 8 years before it worked, right? Or if I'm just looking at someone else's agency that's super successful, it's somebody that I know, I really respect them. I love hanging out with them and I'm seeing the success they're having. But like, what did it look like 10 years ago? Like, what did it take? What kind of debt did they have? What mistakes have they made? How have they pivoted? What processes have they created that have taken time? And I'm comparing year 1 or year 2 to someone else's year 12, year 20, or third generation. And you're not even talking apples to oranges. You're talking apples to Alfa Romeos, right? I mean, like, they're not the same thing. You are not in the same.
I consider myself a bit of a social media expert, so I think I'll weigh in here. I don't understand why everybody's laughing.
Oh my gosh, my eyes just teared up, y'all. Seriously. Sorry.
Well, fine. No, I'm not going to say it then.
No, please teach me. Oh, Obi-Wan Kenobi. Oh, social media.
No, to your point, like, you just cannot base your success or your perception of your success or your failure on anyone else's, especially if you don't even know the person.
That's right.
People are creating illusions on social media every single day.
I love
I mean,
the,
I was trying something new last night, y'all, and I videoed it. I was in the studio at the dance studio, and when I tell you, I looked like a baby giraffe trying to learn to walk. It was like the worst thing on the planet. And I'm like, I should actually put this video on socials and say, look, I've been doing this for 30 years. And when I try to learn something new, this is what I look like, right? And I mean, I don't know how many business people will really put something out there and say, hey, look, I tried this and I failed. I'm going to try again tomorrow. And I'm probably going to fail again. And maybe in 6 or 9 months, will I be able to do it, right? We don't put that out there.
That's what Shane would have looked like last week in his chair, squirming, trying to get through those 6 minutes of not talking.
That's right. That's right. I don't know. I just have this visual of this older commercial of, the guy in front of the beautiful house with the beautiful lawn and riding the really cool lawnmower on a beautiful sunny day. And he's got, really expensive cars in the driveway, and he's got this big smile on his face. And it's basically like a credit repair or a bankruptcy commercial or something like that. And he's like, I have all of this, and how do I do it? I'm in debt up to my eyeballs, right? And it's an older commercial, and I'll have to find it, and we'll have to
What
share
I was
it with
picturing
social
in my
media.
head when you were saying is someone walked up and put the foreclosure sign up.
Yeah.
Right.
But that's kind of what happens with social media. People portray themselves, a lot of times better than it is. And, and I think that's what sometimes causes others not to want to do that. Right. And marketing's changed. Social media has changed the marketing game. And we do a lot of video and have moved to video on social media. And really kind of comes back to a previous podcast about telling our story, right? Like, just part of that is our effort to tell our story so somebody else doesn't tell our story. And you should do that as an independent agency owner. You should tell your story. I think video is a really good way, and social media is a really good way to tell your story. What you just have to stay grounded on is that comparison game. And that's where the salespeople in us, the competitive person in us, we allow that comparison thing to actually take us down instead of driving us forward.
Yeah. If you can harness it and use it for good, by all means, but this comes back to your personality, right? And we talked about it earlier too. You have a baseball team, you can't coach everybody the same. Some people, like Tanya said, you have to tell them that was terrible, go try again. And there's other people that you have to say, okay, you just brought me a big pile of doo-doo. I got to find the silver lining in that thing and tell you how great you did at that one thing so that we can start turning this around. Right? I got both on my baseball team, but you have to recognize that and work with what you got. So if you're the type of person who sees other people are successful and that makes you work harder in the proper way, go ahead, go do it. But if you think that's going to make you start gambling and doing crazy things and making stupid decisions, well, then you need to, put the phone down.
Yeah. And I think it's important not to confuse, comparison from learning from others, right? Like, it's important for you to understand the difference when you're looking at a successful agency and you want to see how they got from A to B, right? I mean, it's different than looking at them and saying, man, well, they're here. Why am I not here? Right. So I think it's important to understand the difference between the two.
By the way, I think most people are somewhere in the middle of everything is unicorns and roses and glitter, and you suck at everything you do. Most of us are somewhere in the middle. And so I do want to go back and say that, because if, like, we need to be corrected. We're going to correct ourselves. Probably we're going to be harder on ourselves than anybody else is. But sometimes we need somebody to say, hey, look, I watched this video of what you were doing last night, and this one thing looks really great. So let's build off this one thing that looks really great. But yeah, it sucked. It was terrible. But, you can usually find something to build on, to give yourself some hope, right? And I think sometimes we as new agency owners need somebody to point out, yes, you're not where you thought you were going to be, because you underestimated your expenses, because that happens. And Shane can talk to that. But you're gonna underestimate your expenses. You're gonna overestimate what you're gonna sell in your first year.
Yeah, one of the things that I learned early on in business, had some people, and my dad told me this, I had some other people kind of encourage this as well, is, when you have an idea, like I was Mr. Projection, I was Mr. Sales Guy, right? Like, hey, if we do this thing, we're going to generate this many sales in this time period. Like, this was the 25-year-old Shane conversation. I'm constantly like doing these projections and making it look great. And, it would always be like, my dad would be like, great, if we're going to invest in that, I'm going to need you to cut your sales in half and double your expenses. And if you still like the return, then let's do it. Right. And it became sort of a thing for us, like, hey, cut the sales in half, cut the revenue in half, and double the expenses. Does it still work? Does it still make sense? Or in starting a new agency, it prepares you a little better, right? Like, it prepares you to kind of see it through a different lens. And I don't think that's like lowering the bar. That's not what the point is. The point is to be a really good financial, preparation around starting a new business. Many agents that we work with, they've never owned a business before. Like, starting an independent agency is the first business they've ever owned. And so there's a lot more that goes into that than just, writing insurance business, writing policies, building a book of business.
If you are an agency owner or wanting to start your own independent agency, and you're looking to build for a decade, right? Find that long-term success, and you want a partner that's going to think long-term too, we would love to talk to you here at the Integra Partner Network. Carrier strategy, profitability, systems to make you efficient. That's what we do. And we love helping agents become successful and build a legacy with successful agencies. I'm going to leave us today with this quote from Kobe Bryant, even though I was really, really tempted to go with a good Tom Brady one, but I'm not going to, Mike, because, I may need your help later today. But Kobe Bryant said, the moment you give up is the moment you let someone else win.
Attitude's a choice. Make a great one.
Bye, y'all.
At the Integra Partner Network, we understand that carrier access is the key to your agency's success. That's why Integra offers direct access to top-rated personal and commercial carriers, ensuring your agency thrives in today's challenging market. And with our comprehensive resources, profit sharing and bonus opportunities, technology and peer support, all while you retain 100% of your book with no penalties to exit. Integra is ready to empower you and your agency to find sustained growth. Find your way to Integra. Visit IntegraPartnerNetwork.com today. That's IntegraPartnerNetwork.com.